Sunnyside, New York, across the street, and all the trees are in flower, and most of the trees have white blossoms on them. Have you noticed that? You know, that got me to think. I was sitting in the car and I was looking at all the white flowers. Could it be they are remembering all the snow flurries whose reincarnation these blossoms are? So maybe they are just thinking about their very immediate ancestors, the snow flurries, which we had many this past winter. So I was looking at this and it got me to think. So you see how my mind works? I'm always just going crazy here. And then when I got to here, and I was just saying, there is a riot outside. Please forgive me for my next comment, okay? I told some friends here, I said there's a riotous display of tackiness outside. Maybe it's wonderful. A lot of la joie de vivre outside. And there are a lot of bon vivant. But I think it's just so appropriate that we're here talking about something old and cultured and beautiful, art and beauty. Because after all, let's ask ourselves, what sustenances have we but poetry, art, colors, images in this lonely, very solitary existence that is called life? So I think it's quite appropriate that on a spring day like today, we're talking about the two eternal spring of Chinese culture that is manifested by Kunqu and its most prominent descendant, the Beijing opera. The two operatic, musical, and dramatic genres that are the Kunqu has been around for almost 600 years, and the Beijing opera has been around for more than 200 years. In other words, I'll be talking about something very old. Yet, as I just mentioned, they are the eternal spring in Chinese culture. So something old is not necessarily old. Something old can remain very young. Maybe not human beings, but the spirit and art and beauty. So I think it's totally appropriate that we are talking about this before you watch the show next Saturday. You are going to, aren't you? Because if you don't, after this talk, you hear all about the beauty and art, but you don't witness it. That means you are just learning how to swim on the land or on the shallow water side. You have to get to the deep end, to taste it. So you're all going, I trust. Now I'm hustling for the producer of the show, okay? Yes. And ironically, she's not here because she will be the star of the performance of two of the performances given next Saturday. So she is just resting at home. She's resting her voice. Now, today, I would say the topic is a stupendous one. That's why this is my notes. That's it. Yeah. All I have to say is on this, so you can go home now. So all I did was put down the few points that I need to talk about, just in case I forget. So before we talk about this, in life, I hope you agree with me. In life, when we see a cute kid or a gorgeous girl, young girl or baby, if we see the baby alone sitting in the crib or in the cradle or on the bench, but without anyone around this baby, don't you get a little curious about how his or her parents look like? You say, wow, what a lovely baby. I wonder what parents look like. So now we're talking about Kunqu and the Beijing opera. Both of them. One is the reigning still Kunqu is the reigning king of the Chinese theater. There are about 300 theatrical genres in China, but Kunqu reigns supreme. He remains the reigning king of Chinese theater, performing art. And his crown prince happens to be the Beijing Opera. So we're talking about these two beautiful artistic and theatrical genres. And don't you wonder what their parents were like, or where they came from? Because you don't know where they came from. In English, we say, I know where you came from. I know where you come from sometimes. So I have to spend a little time, because actually this course to talk about all these things, a subject as stupendous as this, I need at least 5 or 6 hours. But then, of course, I know you're more than willing to be with me for so long. Yeah. You will hang around, right? Even if at 4 o'clock, I leave, you will follow me, no? Yeah. So let's see, let's meet. And when does Chinese performing art of China, when did it all start? I would say it started, historically, as far back as 1100 BC, and which is represented or manifested in the Book of Songs, a course which I just gave last week. Was it last week? Yeah, I think so. So those 305 songs, they started the performing art. So during the Han Dynasty, which was about 700 years after these songs were begun to be sung by the Chinese farmers, there was a great scholar whose last name is Mao, the same as Chairman Mao, but markedly different. One is an artist. Let me hesitate. Let me not say what the second one was. Okay? This Lord Mao from the Han Dynasty, he wrote something about the Book of Songs. So he says the spirit of the people on the land, meaning the Chinese, is such. The following: as human beings, we all need speech to express our inner thoughts. But sometimes when speech is not enough, then we start to proclaim and exclaim. But when proclamations and exclamations cannot convey the thoughts, the Chinese turn to songs, poetic songs. But sometimes, and when even poetry and songs cannot fully convey the thoughts, a Chinese person, a human being, would uncontrollably wave his hands and feet, and thus leading to singing and dancing, performing art. So I would say that is the definition of how performing art started in the Chinese history. Does that make any sense at all? My poor translation, with notwithstanding, it's not hard for you to see exactly where performing art comes from. It comes from the thoughts, whatever you want to express. So I still remember when I was taught by a few great masters, they always ask me, do you know what you're doing on stage? You're doing this, you're doing that, but do you know what you're doing? I looked at them and I said, frankly, no. So he said, you are doing nothing but expressing your thoughts. Just like the Italians say, mangia, perché, say, eat. Yeah, they do this. So we say, oh, you're so nice. This is everyday movement. This is realism. It cannot be accepted or recognized, acknowledged as art. So the Chinese try to transform this everyday movement into art, into magic, to change realism into magic. So instead of pointing, gee, you're so gorgeous, I do, you're so gorgeous. And then to the audience, right? Then you will see, wow, you compare this and this. You tell me, which one has more magic to it? This one. And so that way of pointing to someone has transformed or has elevated realism into magic. And that is the end of all the poets who would compose plays. And all the performers would perform these plays, poetic dramas. And this is actually part of the inner spirit of this classical theater. I would say too, Kunqu and its most prominent descendant, the Beijing Opera. So it started so long ago, but it wasn't until the 13th century. You see, I skipped almost 14 centuries, or maybe more. And because in between, it's too long, as I said. I was just joking feebly before. I will let you go by 4 o'clock. I will not hold you hostages because you're going to be very bored and tired of my being here talking. So let's skip to Chinese performing art of China did not fully flower until the 13th century, which is the Yuan dynasty, when the Mongolians came to rule. By that time, I hope you agree with things that I say. Performing art, if it's first it's speech, then it's song, proclamations and explanation, and then poetry, and then dance. So all these speech, songs, dance, and all these must mature before they can come together to have performing art. Do you agree? And so by the 13th century, that's why I decided to give you a sheet of chronology so you can look at it and figure out. So do you see how many centuries that I jumped, that I skipped? I skipped from Zhou dynasty, 1100 BC, forward. I fast forwarded to the 13th century. But what happened before the 13th century? We had the great Han dynasty. We had the great Tang dynasty. Actually, the Chinese culture flowered 3 times in the long history of China. The first time Chinese culture flowered was during the Zhou dynasty, ZHOU, starting 1100 to around 500, 400 BC. That was the first time Chinese culture flowered. All forms of culture matured and flowered. So the character Zhou, ZHOU in Chinese character, it appears in many words, characters. A word, silk, crêpe de Chine, fine silk, has silk radical. Right hand side is Zhou, meaning it was created during the Zhou dynasty. If the Chinese put the heart, which is the Chinese mind, which is the Western mind, the Chinese heart is the Western mind. So if the Chinese put the heart, the picture for the heart, next to the Zhou dynasty, Zhou, then guess what that means? Melancholy. Meaning prior to the Zhou dynasty, the Chinese were idiots. They didn't even know when to feel sad. It wasn't until the Zhou dynasty that the people begin to sing songs and they began to feel melancholy and sadness. So many characters would travel with the Zhou character. That tells us that Zhou dynasty marks the first flowering of Chinese culture. And the second flowering of the Chinese culture, or all the cultural forms or genres, was during the Tang dynasty. During the Tang dynasty, poetry reached its height. The Tang poetry, primarily represented in the pentasyllabic and the heptasyllabic poets. When I say pentasyllabic, that means 5 characters per line. The Chinese language happens to be a monosyllabic language. So when I say pentasyllabic poem, that means each line consists of 5 characters, 5 syllables. And heptasyllabic would be 7 characters per line, because hepta is 7. So during the Tang Dynasty, heptasyllabic poems and pentasyllabic poems reached their height. And after that, during the Song Dynasty, following the Tang Dynasty, all the beautiful pentasyllabic and heptasyllabic poems where all the subjects had been written, had been perfectly, ideally depicted by the Tang poets. So the Song people, Song literati, members of the intelligentsia, the poets, they were compelled to come up with a new poetic genre, which is the Song poetry, which is based on songs. So it's not restricted by pentasyllabic poem or heptasyllabic. Sometimes one line can be 9 syllables, but that doesn't mean it can be randomly or sloppily written. No, not at all. Because the syllables have to match the songs. The Song poetry poems are based on songs. So if there are 8 syllables in the song of each line, you have to give me 8 characters of that poetic work, composition, of that poem. With these few words, I'm not sure if you understand, but let's do this. After my talk, I will save maybe 5 or 6 minutes so you can ask me questions. So if you have questions, just write it down, and later on you can ask me. Yeah, maybe I just didn't know what I was talking about, so I can't answer you. That means you came in for nothing. Okay, you have wasted your trip. So by asking me questions, you can test whether or not this old fool really knows something or not. I'm bragging. Don't take me seriously. You're looking at me in front. You say, oh, what an idiot. We have come to listen to the lecture by an old idiot. I'm just joking. I'm not. You're so serious. We're talking about theater. I see the ladies here smiling. The guys are so macho. All the ladies are left smiling to me, you know. Okay, so by the 13th century, by the time that the Mongolians came to China to rule and call their great dynasty as the Yuan dynasty. By the way, the character Yuan, the sound Yuan, means baby. The character is the picture of a baby, and the meaning is the beginning, the bottom of everything. So because that dynasty, Yuan dynasty, marked the first time non-Chinese came to China to rule the Chinese. So they thought their dynasty would be a newborn baby. He would live on forever. But nothing man-made can live forever. Only art and beauty can live forever. Because we all pass. Whether it's laughter or tears, sooner or later we will all pass the gate. But art and beauty, that's the only thing created by men that will not die. And so during the Yuan dynasty, the Mongolians, they didn't even have a written language when it came to rule the Chinese. Whereas the Chinese had already had more than 2,000 years of glory in literature, in art, in beauty, in almost all cultural genres. So 7 years after the establishment, after the founding of the great dynasty, the Mongolian emperor saw the dire need of a language. So what did they do? The emperor, the Yuan emperor, the Mongolian emperor, quickly gave order to a Tibetan monk to create a written language for the Mongolians. And the language is quite like Arabic, you know. And the way it's written from right to left, they do it that way. Because the language, the structure of the language of Tibet, Tibetan, Mongolian, Japanese, Korean, Hungarian, and Afghanis, Afghan. All these languages, the structure, yes, the structures are the same. Only the Chinese is different. We go by pictures, we go by music, we go by picture. Only the Chinese is a strictly visceral language. All other languages are cerebral languages. So, not until the 13th century did the Mongolians have a written language. And then the Mongolians, for fear of any insurgents or insurgencies, or for they were so afraid of all the Han majority insurgents, so the emperor gave imperial edict that the examination system was abolished, meaning people from poor family from all corners in China could attend the examinations and pass the examinations one level following the other until finally they become the imperial scholars, and then they could take up important positions in the government. But they stopped that because they didn't even have a written language. They depended on Chinese language, so they didn't want the Han people. And knowing how the majority of Han were against them, so they forbade. There was a law to forbid the Han Chinese to serve the government. So all the Han scholars, all the poets, all members of the intelligentsia were so frustrated. What did they do? They vented their anger by writing poetic dramas. Because creating drama, through dramas, they can create an evil mother-in-law, an innocent daughter-in-law, and that evil mother-in-law would be the Mongolian, and that victim, the sweet little poor daughter-in-law, would be the Han people. Through that, the Yuan rulers, the Mongolian rulers, first of all, they didn't really understand the Chinese language. Even if they did, the Chinese would say, "We're just having a pet drama. You know, we're talking about this mother-in-law. Why are you so sensitive?" You know, so no one challenged these dramas. The Mongolians just left the Chinese people alone. So that's why all the poets, they started to write poetic dramas until drama flourished. And Beijing, the current capital, marked the first time the city served as the capital of China. It was during the Yuan dynasty. And so a lot of performers, musicians, and composers, they would gather in the capital city of Beijing and try to practice their art to show. And also since it was a big metropolis, a lot of members of the audience is great, so a lot of people went there. And one of the actors was from the south to the west of the Suzhou, city of Suzhou. Are you familiar with the name Suzhou? Suzhou is arguably the most beautiful city in China for the past, I don't know, maybe 4,000 years or more. When Marco Polo came to China and he traveled from the south to Beijing, when he passed through Suzhou, he said, Venezia, Venezia, he said. And when the Chinese people go to Venezia, they say, Suzhou. That's what my sister said. I don't know how long Venezia has been there, but I don't think 5,000 years is the answer. I don't think so. Maybe 2,000 years. Venezia, maybe or maybe not. I don't know. But which gives you an idea. It's a city of water. So near Suzhou, between Suzhou and Shanghai. Now, from Shanghai to Suzhou, nowadays, if you go to, it takes you only 2 hours by car, because now they have highway and all that. In the old days, it would take 5, 6, 7 hours. It was long. It was far. So in between Shanghai and Suzhou, there is a city called Kun, K-U-N. Shan, S-H-A-N, that is the name of that city. Kunshan, which Shan is mountain. There are no mountains there. It's a plain, it's a flat land. But the place is called Kunshan. So that's where the sound Kunqu comes from. K-U-N, Kunqu means melody. So the tunes from Kun. So this, one of the actors who went from the south to the north to Beijing, in his attempt, in his hope to become a star. Because he started out in his hometown as a good singer, a good performer with a very fine voice. But when he went to Beijing, this is like a soprano from Verona coming to New York. She can stay here for, the competition is very intense. So he spent 5-6 years in Beijing without getting anywhere. So he got small parts. So in total frustration, he went back to his hometown, which is Kunshan, the south. And then first he felt very dejected and depressed. And then he said, but my local music is very beautiful. Why don't I create one dramatic form myself and perform the songs? So he started this Kunqu. And this is in early 16th century. Very early 16th century. I think it was between 14th and 15th and 16th century, I think. And this man started this Kunqu. And then a group of singers, performers, and instrumentalists, musicians, so they heard about the place that he composed. So they said, wow, beautiful words, beautiful poems. Let's set it into music. And the performer said, how about if I dance? And by that time, dance had already appeared in China. It was during the twilight years and throughout the Song dynasty, the two dynasties before the Yuan dynasty. There appeared a lot of street storytellers at street corners in China, in all big metropolises, telling stories after hundreds of years of wars, battles, and fights, and love, and hate, separation, laughter, and tears. So all these storytellers, they would stay at street corners telling stories. So that's how it all started. And then, as they're telling the stories, a lot of passers-by would gather to listen to their stories. And before they knew it, a group of singers and dancers, they walk by, they hear the story, they said, after he has told the story, they walk up to him, they would say, how about if I come to portray that evil mother-in-law that you wrote? They go, oh, because I can do it. Yeah, you want me to be an evil mother-in-law? Yeah, I can do it. Yeah. And another actor, guys. Another actor would say, you needed some little girl to play this poor little daughter-in-law? I can do it. I can do daughter-in-law. So they said, so how about we join you? You're telling the story, we perform. How's that? So the storyteller said, okay, let's try it, So as he's telling the stories, all these singers and dancers, they start to perform next to him. And before you know it, some musicians, they said, you're telling the stories, what if I play some music to accompany you? So the first guy, the storyteller says, okay. So who is this storyteller? Most of them are poets. They compose these stories. Does that make any sense at all? I'm telling you how this classical Kunqu and Jinju, how they were born, where they came from. So all these are there, all these people I just mentioned, all these genres personified, they are the uncles and parents, grandparents and granduncles of these two theaters. So that is the beginning. So Yuan dynasty marks the dynasty, the era when drama emerged. And First, it's in its, still in drama, is in its nascent form. It wasn't until the following dynasty, the Ming Dynasty, that this genre was performed and it was rehearsed and revised and changed and improved until it became seriously, officially flowered. So during the Ming Dynasty, Kunqu became the reigning king of the time, both with common people, the regular citizens, and in the palace. It ruled the world of entertainment. But of course, in the palace, some of the very juicy plays, kind of very sensual, not physically, but words, poetic words, are very sensual. They are bad. So you're in luck, because next Saturday, if you watch that startled dream, it's marked by sensuousness or sensuality. You wouldn't believe. But just keep your eyes on the two leads. When they're making love, you just watch how love making was created, was carried out on stage, Chinese way. You'd be surprised. Because you would think, oh, maybe they would kiss, maybe they would at least hold hands. Well, I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag. You'll find out. So this is how drama started. So from the 13th century on to this current day, Kunqu, I'm repeating myself, has been the reigning king of all forms of theater in China. And one of the greatest plays, there were about 600 plays. One of the most famous plays would be the Peony Pavilion. And because of the season, I think the Peony Pavilion performed next Saturday is truly very timely, because the story takes place in the spring. So I think, and also, spring is here. We all feel spring is a season for love. Even for this old man, still I can feel it. Look at this. Nobody sympathizes such dirty old men. Yes, we're all dirty old men. One day you will be a dirty old man too, because heart doesn't die. Speaking of which, I remember a week before Tennessee Williams died, a week, he was interviewed by the Times. So they asked him, because he was not well at all. So the reporter asked him, said, Mr. Williams, how are you doing these days? Without missing a beat, he said, I'm okay. I'm still frequented by chronically inflamed libido. And that is what I call quintessential Tennessee Williams. How did he come up with this chronically inflamed libido? And I totally understand it. If we are not ever frequented by chronically inflamed libido, we might as well be dead. But when I use the word libido, I think libido not just sexual. Well, libido is sexual, but I think libido covers all other areas too. With poetry, with art, with beauty, I think that's libido too. But that's Wang theory. You don't have to. The word in English word libido, I do trust, is referring to sexual. Am I right? But I'm not English. I'm not American. I'm Chinese. I can do whatever I want with the English word. Okay, now, the Kunqu and its most prominent descendant. What is the similarity? Because next week, if you go to the performance, it will be one of the rare opportunities for you to watch two perform in the same program, on the same stage, on the same day. at the same performance, in the same production. That makes next Saturday's performance quite unusual. To speak nothing of the performers and the musicians. That alone is, I think, worth seeing. Because usually people put on Peking opera or they put on Kunqu performances. And very frankly, not too many Beijing opera singers today know how to sing Kunqu. Now, first I will talk about the similarity. In the classical Chinese theater, because of the nature of the Chinese, because the language is so visceral, order, grammatical order, linguistic grammatical order is so strict. You have to put all the characters in the right place. If I say, not since yesterday have I eaten, you cannot have a Chinese sentence in that order. You cannot start a sentence with not. You have to say, I'm alive. Let me tell you something about me. I, from yesterday until today, nor eat thing. Meaning thoughts come out, words come out as thoughts do. I'm talking in terms of their order. Do I make any sense? You do understand? So let's make a deal. If I'm clear, at least you nod once. How's that? Just to please this old person. Okay? Otherwise, there's no way for me to know whether or not you understand me. Because I'm telling you about this very alien thing, the language and the grammar, and so we're here to listen to this theater. And what are you doing? I'm this is an occupational hazard. Because I'm a language teacher foremost. So wherever I go, I'm a language teacher. Before you know it, I'm going to teach you how to say this and that. So the similarity is that because we are we go by order. Everything is so rigorously set up, ideally set up. So there are a lot of sets of conventions as to music, as to perform, as to act, as how your eyeballs should move, how your fingers should move, how your body should move. You cannot just move at will, at your own will. You have to study the conventions. And if there is this great artist performer inside of you, if there's a little Vivian Lee inside of you, if there's a little Laurence Olivier inside of you, then you do that. You carry out that one act or sound of convention in a very special way, and then you become a star. But we all follow sets of conventions. So in terms of sets of convention, as regards performing movements, how to point, how to sit, how to look, what to wear, how to dress, makeup, they're similar, the two theaters. So at a first look, you say, wow, they're the same. But not at all, they're not the same. Because this similarity lies in music, in the music. After all, we're talking about operas here. The most important thing is music. Nowadays, I'm sorry to say this, Gal, Peter Gal, at the Metropolitan Museum, he's into performance and looks. Okay, every soprano has to look gorgeous. Hello, wake up. The world, in the history of opera, there's only one Maria Callas who happens to be gorgeous and beautiful and expressive and stunning voice. Okay, even when she couldn't sing anymore, I think she was still stunning, her voice. Because she carried her heart in her voice. That doesn't die. Even though she may not be able to hit the high note in the I Buridani, in the Lucia, but the spirit, actually, she matured more. She was like Chateau Margaux. She's a fine wine. Everybody said, all the critics said, oh, Miss Callas' voice just basically sucks. I don't think so. And once she gave the world so much, toward the end, everybody was putting down her. But, I don't understand. Have you no heart? these great artists. But singing, opera, mainly is singing. But in singing and music, they are dissimilar. If I need to give you an analogy, it's a poor analogy, but I give it anyway. I would say Kunqu is a little bit like Bach, Brandenburg, or Partita. It goes on and on and on. So there is a Chinese phrase for the music, for the melody of Kunqu. We call it watermill tune, 水磨调. Meaning that goes on and on and on and on, just like German opera, which does not give you a stop that you can say bravo, bravo. So, but Peking opera, Beijing opera is more like bel canto, Italian, Bellini, Donizetti. I'm mentioning Ipuritani and Lucia and Anna Bolena. You know that I'm crazy about that canto. I love coloratura. I can't stand German opera. I'm parading my ignorance. A lot of people love it. I love German opera, but just not this one. I need that kind of, Italian opera to give me to like cathartic moment. I need to get up, jump up, and say bravo, and German opera just goes on and on. But let me assure you, Kunqu, although it's like that, but it's more like Bach or Vivaldi, at that time, or Agnoni. Are you familiar with these names? I hope you are. Or Telemann, the Baroque. But Beijing opera is definitely bel canto. Because of this, a singer, female singer, singing the lead of a female role type, that singer has to be soprano, mezzo soprano, and alto, 3 in 1. Because I would say 75% of the music in Kunqu is between mezzo and alto. But at times, there are high notes they have to reach. That calls for soprano, which makes a singer, makes it very difficult on the part of the singer. Because in the West, I'm not suggesting that Western opera is easy to sing. It's extremely hard. But alto does not sing high notes. But again, Callas, in her heyday, she could sing alto, like in Norma. In Norma, she could go so low, it's like alto, not even mezzo. And then she can hit the highest notes, like high D, even high E in her heyday. I heard her perform, pirated the version of her Ipuritani in Mexico City. And she hit high E. It was amazing. Wow, glorious. That is the only word to describe her. So you know which opera star is my favorite. When I hear good tones in my language class, I said, from a lady, when I say, you are Maria Callas. But only those who know me, they say, this is the highest compliment from my teacher. Sometimes I say, you sound like Renata Scotto. For me, inside, it's a put down. So, but they don't know. They say, So that Kunqu is marked by that. So next week, if you listen to that, you'll see. It doesn't give you a moment to jump up to, because it's always like, a little bit like Philip Glass or John Adams. Yeah, when you see, I was invited by the students to see Nixon in China. At first I said, no, I don't want to see that. They said, the teacher, it's really good. I think you will like it. You like Philip Glass? I said, yeah. He's like Bach. Amazing. Which tells us Bach is immortal. Of course, we all know that. Timeless. Timeless is Bach. Bach and Schubert, they are my special loves. These two. Of course, I love. So it's like listening to that. So listening to that. So next Saturday, if you go, don't be surprised. But in Peking opera, Beijing opera, as some people say Peking, old days. Now they say Beijing. So I say, sometimes I say this. You know what I'm talking about. But when you're listening, especially the last act, the fourth one, so you see, there's a moment they go, oh, wow, bravo, everybody would do that in the theater. Don't be surprised. And bravo in Chinese, we would say, hao. Hao means good. So, but not just hao, like that. We would scream. So, hao, like that. So tomorrow, next week, if you go there, don't be surprised. You say, oh my God, people are screaming. You know, I'm watching the show with the riffraff. This is Chinese culture, okay? In Chinese culture, we scream, just like in Italy, in Milano. Carlos was doing Traviata with Di Stefano. You know, that was 1955. And the second act after the father, when she says, Addio, and before the last note, people were yelling, brava, brava, and one guy screamed, you are la divina. The Italians were just so emotional. Maybe my parents came from Italy. So I love that the CD of Callas. I listen to it all the time, especially when I'm depressed, when my students don't do their homework. But here, I have all the good students, so they who do their homework, they are here. Those who don't, I treat them very abusively. So now you know, basically, that's the difference. Yeah, so you understand, if the music is that different, if Kunqu is more like water flowing, why? That would allow them, that would enable not having so many high notes, so many turns and twists, would enable them to dance more, to act more. So in the Kunqu theater, every word, Chinese character, must be acted out, must be sung out, acted out, danced out. Whereas Peking opera, because they have to take care of those high notes and the arias, you know, like the bel canto, you know, like the daughter of the regiment, Rossini. Rossini is a poor man's Mozart. Poor man's Bellini, okay, in my opinion. Even though in those days, he was the leading figure. Did you know that? Rossini was calling all the shots, you know. And I said, what? It can't even be compared with Donizetti and Bellini. Thank God he's not here now. Otherwise I would write something to knock him. So in the Kunqu theater, everything you'll see, the girl, when she sings, everything she sings, if she said, there's so many clouds in the sky, and here I am, sitting here all alone, with no one next to me. What are they doing? They're matching their movements. They're blending dance with the libretto. Even recitativo, still every word they say, they dance out. But in Peking opera, they have very focused, concentrated on that sound, that note. So they can. When you're doing the high notes, you really have to do that. You have no time to take care of the body. That's why. So you will find in the Kunqu theater, there are two acts from the piano to the lead. You say, wow, the actions and the movements, the dance movements are markedly more than those in Beijing opera. Now you know why. Because of singing. That's different. And as for instruments, the accompanist is different too. Whereas Kunqu is accompanied by a flute. Of course, there are other instruments. But the main accompaniment is a flute, which creates a very melancholy and much more graceful and less loud. Okay? To the Chinese, Peking opera is very exciting, wonderful. I'm repeating myself, exciting like that kind. But for unaccustomed ears, it can be a little too loud. Because, I tell you why. Because when it first started, Peking opera was performed in the outside, almost in the wilderness, in the open, for all the villagers, poor people, citizens, common people to come. So if it's too quiet, who knows that there's a performance? So they have to bang on the drum and hit the gongs, so all people like 20 miles away can hear a little bit. They all come together to watch the show. In those days, they didn't have computer, nor telephones, just so that you know. So that's why Peking opera is so unusually loud. And also, they don't just beat those things randomly or at will. Everything is done for a purpose. If you see someone at ease, at a very relaxed moment, you will never hear the gong playing, the large gong and small gong. No, the small gong may be thang, thang. What are they doing? They are there to punctuate the motions and emotions on stage. Now, if you hear small gong, thing, a small gong, like this, thing, then you will see the people on stage that are walking. Thing, like that. But if someone is running, would you still hear thing? No. And oh my God, normally they have long sleeves, and then when the sleeves are very gracefully waved and underneath like this, or like throw up to make movements, they're in a very relaxed, in a very mood of ease. They're feeling fine. They're in comfort, and they're most of the time in happiness. But upon hearing something disastrous has happened, what do? With their sleeves, they go, "What's going on?" The servant is here. "Sir, my lord, what's going on?" For a woman, "What's going on?" So the reporter would say, "Your mother has died." Or the thugs, I'm using it. The thugs are here attacking the city. So she's the wife of the magistrate. So she would go stand up, and this time the sleeve is no longer like this. Really? Oh my God! Can you hear both the instruments and the gongs, the percussion section with the large gong, with the drum, boom, boom, crump. Oh my God! You see the sleeves doing this. So when they're very happy in love, sweet, would you see them doing this? No. So you hear all the loud sound for a reason, because all these instruments, particularly the percussion section, every instrument there is there to, as I'm repeating myself, is there to punctuate motions as well as emotions on stage. And in this aspect, there is great similarity, almost the same, because after all, Beijing opera is a favorite son of Kunqu, and they are the representative theaters of China today. Now, if you're coming to the performance next Saturday, the producer has asked me to give a few remarks, to give a brief introduction to the performance and the performance. So So you will hear a little bit more. So I saved some a little bit for next week. So there are special features in both theaters. I will quickly go over because I think as usual I always run out of time. And stage props are reduced to a minimum. You will not see things that people hold, like a cup, holding a cup is just for them to perform. It's a dramatic prop. It's not a thing that they hold. So stage props are reduced to a minimum. And the background, no scenery. The ideal background is pitch black, which explains their gorgeous headpiece, and their out of this world makeup, very elaborate makeup, and then larger than life motions. Because the actors are the main show, which prompted great dramatists such as Brecht, George Bernard Shaw. They all went to China, and Brecht says this is an ideal theater. So no background. In fact, sometimes I would go to the Metropolitan to watch operas, and once I went to see Madame Butterfly, and they're seeing scenery. They build a house and cherry blossom. Everything's in there. Then Cho-Cho-San appeared, maybe 5 times my body. 14-year Japanese delicate girl. She's that big. And she came over here. She got into that room. She occupied the whole room. That beautiful set became more like a pigsty. She was in there. And by the time she committed suicide, the wall came down. It was hilarious. I never ever saw another butterfly again. Because that realism on stage, real scenery and props, clashed with the songs. And of course, she's not Japanese. She's a Caucasian. So if you call for a non-Asian to play this part, to sing, of course it's fine. But make everything from the illusion. Do not let people see realism. That's why in the Chinese theater, there's no background, no scenery. The best scenery is pitch black. So all the characters, the performers, become larger than life creatures on stage, which makes all the performers work much more demanding than the regular singer, because the end of all the designers, composers, and musicians and performers is to blend all three: singing, dancing, performing. Performing includes acrobatic movements too, dance. So this is the concept. And because of all this, and as I said, it started out with a very close connection between the performers and the theater and the audience. In classical Chinese theater, there is no fourth wall. So this fourth wall theory does not apply to Chinese theater. Are you familiar with what I'm saying? In the Western culture, there is fourth wall theory. I'm the actor. It's one wall, second wall, third wall, and there's a fourth wall between you and me. So if I act with, if I'm talking to myself, Hamlet is not looking at you. Hamlet was just looking at nowhere. He's talking to himself. The audience actually does not exist as far as they're concerned, and that should be. But in Chinese, no way. There is no fourth wall. You are trying to show your art to your audience. What do you mean they don't exist? So they definitely exist, and you want them to react. So as I said, we will say, wow, she's a beautiful girl, right? But we'll say, look at you. And by doing that, the audience feels a strange rapport, between them and the actors. They say, wow, oh, wow, good. Yeah, she is beautiful. So there's this strange, quite unusual rapport between the performers and the actors. And next week, if you come to see the performance at the K House, you will see all these things. They will talk to each other, then they turn around to look at the audience to get your approval. So wouldn't hurt you to say, to do that, to show your endorsement. So all this. Now I must talk a little bit more about. So all these things that I just spoke about lead me. I came with a handouts. Thank you so much. 谢谢右手. So the inner spirit, I always call it, I think the inner spirit of classical Chinese drama is what I call a magical illusionism. A magical illusionism, which is an attempt to transform realism into magic or magical illusionism. So everything is based on realism, yet we elevate everyday's language. We're singing to each other. Actually, we're talking to each other. But we elevate everyday speech into high lyrics. We elevate daily movements, walking around, pointing, and doing all different things into fine dance. And then we elevate regular, ordinary emotions, the everyday emotions, into high drama. And that is the end of all artists in Chinese, classical Chinese theater. And that is the inner spirit of the Chinese theater. Now, I must say, point out this piano pavilion. I'm sure, being in New York, I think we're all New Yorkers here, right? So I'm sure over the years, are you getting starting to feel a little tired of this piano pavilion? Just like Monkey King, everywhere you go, it's piano pavilion, piano pavilion. But good news, this August, one towering, living legend, towering figures, performer of the Beijing Opera Theater is visiting New York in August. And did you leave your names with Chinese too? I will send you email messages to announce. And the producers have asked me, excuse me, the producers have asked for my involvement, and I have graciously consented. So and her name is Zhang Huabing. Remember the name. And she is to aficionados of classical dramas in China. Hers is a household name. Everybody knows Zhang Huabing. And she is absolutely great. And she will not come here to perform the Piano Pavilion, nor will she perform the Monkey King. She will perform two grand operas, Beijing opera. I mean the real thing. I'm not saying Piano Pavilion is not the real thing, but it's just overly done. I mean,
what is she going to be singing?
One is Suolina.
In August.
One is called Suolina. One is called 红中恋吧.
Wow. Where?
Which is very unusual.
Where?
At the Lincoln Center. At the Koch Theater. That I have seen her on DVD. I have never, I have been to China in 68 years. In 66 years, 67 years. So what do I know? But people have shown me her DVD. she is, because I've seen the best. She's no Maria Callas, but she is better Renée Fleming. Let me put it that way. I think she's close to Elizabeth Schwarzkopf. So this peony pavilion, actually, it's a beautiful thing. So now I want you to share with me what I have written for the publication of my book, my translation on Kunqu, and this is what I wrote about this one episode, which is before the scene, the act that you will see if you're going next week. I'm not going to show you what's going to be performed, okay? Just to whet up your appetite. So I'll show you what is performed before what you will be seeing. Am I crow or what? So, synopsis of a stroll in the garden. And after her stroll in the garden, she's very tired, emotionally and physically. So she slips into a slumber. And what happens in her sleep? Lo and behold, something happens. What? I'm not going to tell you. If you don't go see that next the Saturday's play, you will never find out. And it wouldn't be my fault. Okay, so, but I want you to see how lovely this work is. As high, I hope I have conveyed a little bit of the beauty of this piece of work. First, the synopsis. A stroll in the garden is a highlight scene from the Peony Pavilion. The masterpiece, not a masterpiece, the masterpiece by Tang Xianzu, who is the most talented poet-playwright of the Ming Dynasty. Imbued with hauntingly beautiful poetry, exquisite dances, and subtle emotions, the scene brings the audience to the highest realm of the Kunqu theater, where literature and performing art are fused into one. Du Linyang is the delicate 16-year-old daughter of Du Bao, prefect of Nan'an in southern Song dynasty. Her father's social aspirations have delayed her betrothal. She idles away her lonesome days, reading poetry with an elderly tutor. Her only companion is her loyal and trusted friend, trusted maid, Fragrance. The scene begins on a fine, lazy spring morning. The languor of the day awakens in the heart of Linyang some sweet but melancholy longings. Urged and accompanied by Fragrance, she sneaks out for a stroll in a nearby garden. A once gorgeous but long abandoned garden. After her morning coiffure and dressing, as a young lady forbidden to venture outside of the confines of her home, she is at once overwhelmed by the breathtaking scenery. But her marvels at the splendor of nature soon give way to the sad realization that her own youth and beauty is much too like springtime in its transitions. The scene ends with a weary and despondent Linyang slipping into a slumber. In extended sequences of arias, principally sung by Linyang, and elaborately elegant pas de deux, danced by the two leads, a stroll in the garden stresses the significance of the cultivation of the spontaneous feelings of the heart. It is primarily a tale of the power of passion. Du Linyang, a daring portrayal of a cloistered maiden, remains one of the most moving images of a lovelorn girl ever presented in Chinese literature than on the traditional Chinese stage. Now, in this episode, she dances this famous pas de deux with her maid. And if you go next Saturday, you will see the second pas de deux as danced by her and someone else. So there are 4 major pas de deux in this. And then there's a third pas de deux, a grand one. And that is after her death. She is her spirit. Her spirit appears quite like Giselle. Chinese answer to Giselle. And in the second one, I can let the cat have out of the bag. In the second pas de deux, she is like the Chinese answer to Odette in Swan Lake. Not Odile. Okay, now I want you to watch this. And the translation on the screen that you will see is translated by a teacher, a professor from Berkeley in San Francisco. Her translation is directly to the point, very simple, easy to look. Otherwise, it's too poetic. You get too involved with the language. You forget what they're doing. So I totally see the point of her translation. Yet, her translation does not do justice to the original poetry. So I must ask you, plead to you to be patient, bear with me, to hear me read the lines. And then you know what she's singing. Du Linyang wakes up, she comes out, she enter Du Linyang, she sings. My dream softly fading, I awoke to what music? 'Tis thee, Oriole, thy singing so sweet and melodic. Again, spring has stirred all nature. How time does fly. Yet still deep within the walls of this mansion stand I. That's the first aria. It already tells you the mood she's in. And then fragrance, the maid comes in. Enter the maid, sings. Having emptied the incense burner of its ashes, I discarded 2 remnants of embroidery thread. Spring has come, but no news can be happy, alas, to my mistress who laments the time that so quickly has sped. Greetings, miss. Morning again, is it not? Bringing with it but more longing. In language, I leave my coiffure unattended. Here you are alone, miss, leaning by the window, with your hair languorously wagging. Oh, these nameless sorrows. It's no use trying to rid myself of them, and how they only deepen and will not be a thing of past. But miss, I have told all the songbirds, as you instructed, that they should cherish the spring days while they last. Have you spoken to the gardener about sweeping the petals off the paths? Fragrance? Yes, miss, I have. Fine. Bring me my robes and the mirror stand then. Yes, miss. As her cloud-like coiffure is reflected in the mirror, scents are doubled, for my lady does her robes savor. Here they are, miss. Set them down, will you? Yes, miss. My, what a lovely day it is. See wisps of luminescent mist drifting lazily into my lonesome court. Spring, oh spring, how carelessly have you meandered into Kavod. Listlessly, I tend to my coiffure. Why, I can see in mirror my ebony hair and only part of my face. Oh, how I long to take a stroll outside, but fear it would bring social disgrace. And this much I will ask you to watch by one of the greatest living performers performing this. Next week, if you would go watch, she's not bad at all. Otherwise, I wouldn't be helping her. Do you feel a little bit about the poetry? I'm trying to. Yeah, thank you so much. I want you to watch this, and I will join you. I will sing. Oh, I'm supposed to play the what I read, but could you see the words? I'm so sorry. So what an idiot I go watch it with you. Then I come back. How was it? Yeah, because I think she did a wonderful job. And did you see what she was doing? What they're doing? The maid. I mean, she's gorgeous already. You know, what is there to fix? You know, but it was everything was just illusory. So the maid is tending to her coiffure. So she was doing that, and there are 3 very famous a set of conventions ruling the looking. We call it the 3 looking at the mirrors 3 times. So did you see the pas de deux, what I said, started when the maid is holding it like this. So she's going back and to look at her own, the back of her hair. So 3 different angles. And did you see how they took care of how they stand? Never ever were the bodies facing the audience like this. Always either this or that. So there's no beauty there. So whether it's a man or woman, the way they stand, the way they point, there's always this. Just like I'm talking. Let's talk about that tacky pageant, which is no comparison to this. But all things related to beauty, whether it's elegant or tacky, still, basic thing is nobody will stand like this, like at the beauty pageant, swimming suit competition. Okay. Would that make sense? Everybody stand like that here too. The idea to the Chinese is very important to stand like this. For men, for big warriors, they do this too. Not completely like this, but usually this. For young men, we do this. For girls, they do this, and they stand like this. And also, always, there's one masculine force, foot, or you can call it feminine force. Meaning, we have 2 forces as how they exist in the 2 legs. One is solid, standing on the ground. The other one is like this. All ladies here, you know that. When you wear a dress, you stand like this. You have your picture taken. You're not going to do this. You're not Anamanyani playing a peasant woman sitting there. Hey, very good. You know, not like that. So you have to stand like this or this. Did you notice how they stood on stage? And did you see that? And also, I forgot to mention something, which is circular movement. Very, very important. Anything related to culture, in Chinese culture, anything related to beauty must be carried out in a circular manner. So I don't know if you noticed, everything they do is like this. Never ever square like that. They always do this, and the body too. Doing this, doing this. So it's very important when you're starting as a child, starting to learn the art. First, the teacher teaches you to move like this, to move like this. Whether you're a warrior or a girl, doesn't matter. The movement is all, big warrior will move like this, like this. The girl will do this, like this. If I want to point to this side, I have to start this side. For girl. For a warrior, I want to point to this. I do. Everything is circular. I want to point to the moon. I cannot say, that's the moon. That's realism. So if you did this, look at the moon. And then it becomes art. But in ballet, it's the same thing. Romeo, you know, is looking at Juliet on the balcony. Is he going to say, hi, Juliet, what's up? No, he goes, Juliet. The only difference is that in the Western culture, in Western performing art, chest is sticking out like this. They create a circular movement like this, like this. Ballerina or male, they all will stand like this. But Chinese, we form with our body, we form part of a circle. But it's this, to show modesty. Still like this, but Western art is this. You see the difference? Actually, there's no difference. We all set out to create circular movement. So in the life of a human being, I think, as I said before, nothing is important other than but art and beauty. Speaking of life, I cannot help thinking of something very important spoken by an ancient Greek philosopher, Seneca, who said this famous line, I'm sure you all know, Vita brevis est ars longa. Yes, life ends, but art endures. Thank you so much. I will see you again.